Thanks so much for being here. I'm Kate Larsen. I'm a reporter with ABC 7 News. And if you see me spacing out staring at your coffee longingly, it's because I was on the 11 o'clock news last night. But very happy to be here. I know, Alex, we were just drinking coffee this morning. A little bit of traffic, but I'm really excited to be here. I've been in the news business for about 15 years. And as a journalist, we sort of get this interesting bird's eye perspective on social trends. And that really does dictate a lot of storytelling. What do we care about right now, and how is that influencing life right here in this moment? While corporate responsibility and individual executive accountability, holding those responsible accountable, has definitely been a major trending headline for the past several years. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Alex Spunt this past month, and like many people in the fashion industry, she is a trendsetter herself. One of the founders of Everlane, a San Francisco clothing company. Alex, what inspired you 8 years ago to start a company not based just on turning a profit, but really trying to make a difference?
Well, first, hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here, too. I'm not actually a founder, but I have been there since the beginning. I had the good fortune of meeting our founder, Michael, about 4 months before we launched the brand. You know, it's a good question. It's funny when you look back on this stuff because it's not like we set out with a super, super clear plan. I think it just felt sort of inevitable to us. You know, Michael is one of these personalities, sort of like classic entrepreneur, questions everything, thinks there's something wrong with everything and there's like a better way to do things. And then I, you know, like you, I had a journalism background. So that sort of like truth seeking was always something that was in my way of thinking. And I'd worked at American Apparel, which, you know, was already a company that had really pushed the envelopes in a lot of ways, a lot of good ways, some less good ways too. But in terms of manufacturing, they had really done things differently. So I think it was just like I said, it just felt inevitable. Even though it wasn't necessarily happening so much in fashion at the time, I think we also took a lot of cues from like the food movement, and we looked at how people really started to care about like provenance and where their food was coming from, and customers were changing. So I think we really looked to sort of the Whole Foods of the world and also like took some inspiration from the food movement.
So you were the second employee at Everlane,
Yeah.
right? This was 8 years ago. She founded in 2011. I personally have noticed a lot of these headlines just in the past 3 years. Were you ever worried about sort of being ahead of the trend, that consumers maybe wouldn't believe in what you and your founder believed in?
I don't think we worried about it necessarily, but I don't think we knew how much impact it would actually have. So when we launched with a couple of t-shirts that were made in downtown Los Angeles, and really beautifully made t-shirts, like Supima cotton, super high quality. And when we started the manufacturing process, we were like, this is crazy. Like, you make a t-shirt like this for, you know, $5, a very high quality t-shirt made in America, and we looked around and there were some boutique brands selling like the same t-shirt for $50, $60. So we were like, again, Michael was like, this is insane. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's what the fashion industry does. So the big thing that we did right in the beginning was we launched with this like radical transparency around the pricing. So right on launch day, we showed the cost of the t-shirt. And that, it resonated with people right away. So we were like, oh, okay. This is a thing, like people care about this. And that was like our first indicator. And of course that gives you more confidence to like keep pushing, right?
Well, and if you go to the Everlane website today, you can look up any item, whether it's a t-shirt, a pair of pants.
Yep.
Sure, Alex's outfit.
Head to toe.
I went shopping there last week at the Valencia store. It's a lot of fun. It shows you the price breakdown.
Yeah.
And you even, on certain items, you can choose what price you pay. There were 3 different options.
Yeah.
What inspired that?
Well, you know, so that's a little bit of a complex thing to explain, but in traditional retail pricing structure, there's 2 things. One, if a brand, let's say I'm a fancy brand and I'm going to sell at Barney's, I'm going to do my markup first, and then we're going to do another markup so that Barney's gets a profit and we get a profit. But also built into that is the presumption that, not all the styles are going to be a hit, and we're going to have too much inventory and some stuff, so we're going to put that stuff on sale. So let's make the margin like a little bit bigger to account for the fact that it's going to go on sale. So that's what most brands do. We came in and said, we're never going on sale. And we haven't, but what we do is we don't always bet right on our buys because buys are really hard. So we do something called choose what you pay. And when we're over inventoried on something, we show the customer how much it costs to make, and then we let them choose what they pay, essentially. So they know, like, are you giving us this much? Are you giving us that much? So it's just a way of sort of bringing that transparency all the way through.
Does anyone ever choose to pay the higher price?
I think it's rare, but I think it's happened, but I think it's more rare.
But it's nice to have that option, and I think the transparent pricing is really unique. As someone who's shopped on many online websites and been into many retail stores, it's not a model that I've seen before. After you guys tackled T-shirts and transparent pricing, you really wanted to focus on manufacturing. Because the T-shirts were all made in LA, right? Mm-hmm. So you decided to do that in China.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to prove responsible manufacturing in China?
I don't know, because we're crazy. It was like such a crazy idea. So we, in the early days, first of all, you have to convince factories to work with you. You're small potatoes and you want to work with the best factories. And at the end of the day, the quality of the factory is kind of everything when you're producing clothing and apparel. So we had found this amazing silk factory in China, and probably not surprisingly, China has a long history of silk. They have some of the best silk factories. They were working with this very well-known brand at the time that I won't mention, but it was like the place to make silk. So we were like, okay, we really want to make our silk shirts in China, and they're going to be at a super disruptive price. But there was so much preconception at that time about China. And it was just like the immediate association was that China was bad. And because we had started manufacturing with LA, and of course everyone assumes that American manufacturing is always great, which P.S. it's not. But it's really case by case with this stuff. So we said, okay, we're going to go to China, but we're going to go with like a videographer and a photographer, and we're going to interview everyone, and we're going to document it, and we were like, we're going to live blog it, which is like, I don't even think anyone was paying attention what time we were doing that, but we thought that was like really important.
Well, people do that stuff now. Because you guys were just sort of years ahead of that trend.
And we were still pretty small too, so we could have posted it the next day. Instead, we did this like insanely grueling trip where we would like visit all these factories during the day, record them, film them. We'd have to go to these like very long dinners with factory owners, and then we'd like get back to our hotel at like midnight, totally jet lagged, and be like, okay, we got to tell everyone what's going on in China. So we visited a bunch of great factories, and so that was sort of the beginning of, like you said, how transparency came about in the manufacturing piece, and really showing people and educating people about factories.
And you can go on the Everlane's website, and with each product, you can look at all the different factories. How many factories do you manufacture at around the world?
I don't know.
More than a dozen, right?
Yeah, it's probably around 20 or so now. And they're really all over the world. So for shoes, they're all in Italy, because if you're making a leather shoe, that's still the best place to do it. Whereas we're going to make a sandal this year that I think is going to be in Peru, because we found a great factory there. A lot of our shirting is still in China. Our denim, which we make at this amazing sustainable denim factory, is in Vietnam. We still do some T-shirts in LA. We do some T-shirts in Vietnam. So it's all over the place. It really depends on the factory.
So how do you, with these 20 factories all over the world, I'm assuming when you say you look for a good factory, it's not just the quality. You want to make sure people are being treated fairly who work there.
Yeah.
How do you, from here in San Francisco, make sure that the people at the factories in China, in Vietnam, in Peru are being treated fairly and that it is a responsible manufacturer that you want to continue working with? Do you have to go on trips?
Yeah, so there's a couple of pieces to it. So our production team goes all the time to visit the factories, and that's super important. And I would just say on like a real human to human level, really getting to know the people who run the factory is probably still one of the best ways to make that kind of judgment call. But we also work with obviously like third-party auditors who are, we have very stringent requirements. The auditors will show up and do like surprise visits and that kind of stuff. And then each factory has a score. And I'm not the person to speak in detail around this stuff, but essentially if a factory doesn't meet our score standard, sometimes it's really simple stuff where it's like, oh, well, the fire escape is blocked by rolls of fabric. You can't do that, And then, if we really like a factory and their score isn't up to par, we'll usually spend I think 3 to 6 months working with them to get the score up. As far as I know, we've never come across anything so egregious, like child labor or anything in that world. But if a factory is not willing to put in the work, we will leave that factory. And we have left factories because they weren't up to par.
Have you been working, though, with a lot of the same factories over the past 8 years?
Yeah, but it really depends, again, on the category. A factory that makes denim generally can't make silk shirts, so it's really, most factories these days are quite specialized.
So let's go to the denim because after pricing, transparency, responsible manufacturing, you really wanted to focus on sustainability. And you mentioned your denim, your jeans made in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Why did you choose that factory?
This factory is amazing. I had the pleasure of spending 10 days there because we went down with the film crew and again, really interviewed and recorded the whole premises and did we did a ton of video work there. And it's in Vietnam and it's basically, what's so amazing is it's like a closed water system. So what that means is a couple of things. First of all, denim uses a ton of water. With each product, there's always multiple sustainability pieces to look at, and then we kind of have to make the decision of what's the thing that you focus on? So with denim, water is a huge thing, and then the second thing is that there's something when you dye denim with indigo, there's something called sludge that comes off the denim, and in a lot of cases it is quite toxic, and in a lot of cases it'll get back into the water system and into the environment, and it's very toxic. So this factory, they have this really innovative filtration system where they're not using any water to make the denim. They're reusing 99.8 or something % of the water, and then they're extracting the toxins from the sludge. And then that is being shipped to a nearby brick factory where it's being mixed with cement. And then they're using those bricks to build affordable housing for the local community. So that's just one, this factory does a bunch of other things, but just to give you an example of the kind of stuff that they're thinking about. The founder's amazing, he's brilliant. He's really innovating on this stuff. So they've become a real partner that we're gonna keep pushing this forward. They're going to start having their own mill, which is going to be huge as well for us.
So you obviously get to know these factory owners very well, intimately.
Yeah.
You worked at American Apparel years ago. In your experience, do other clothing lines similar to Everlane's scale do the same kind of work? I can't really speak to it. I don't know to what extent. I'm sure there are cases of it. But usually when we engage with factories on this level, they're like, wait, what, you want to film us? You want to talk to us? So they're usually pretty surprised the extent to which we go to build relationships and to understand their process, which is, generally pretty complex and not something historically that customers are especially interested in. So the denim's one thing Everlane has done to be sustainable.
Yeah.
And then some other companies, You've also done recycled plastic jackets.
Yep.
Was that tell us about that one.
So that was, we'd already launched puffers. I think this was our third year launching them. So it wasn't like a totally new category for us the way denim was. So, not as huge a marketing opportunity as something like denim. But we were so excited that we were able to figure out how to make our whole line of puffers. So from the big puffy ones to something that's more of like, we call it like a teddy fleece liner, and then the thinner liners. It took us months and months and months, and finally we were able to do the whole thing from recycled water bottles. And our production team worked so hard on figuring it out. So once we knew we could do the whole line, we were like, okay, we're gonna make like a lot of noise around this. And I think that, we obviously, as Everlane grows, it's great. It means we can have like more impact with this kind of stuff. And of course, it's great to reuse 3 million discarded water bottles, but it's a drop in the bucket at the end of the day when it comes to plastic. But for us, we were like, okay, the opportunity here is to really like just bring attention to this cause, which was already getting some coverage in the press. So it was nice. It's kind of like a zeitgeisty moment, and really educate customers and make them think about it. Because what happened to us in the office when we started learning about it is it started completely changing our behaviors at work. And now we've made a commitment to eliminate virgin plastic entirely from our supply chain by 2021. We're getting it all out of our office, which is like so hard.
When we were talking,
chips, you can't have chips.
Or berries. I was talking about my struggle with going to the grocery store, and you try to not buy one-use plastic items, but you buy a thing of berries, and there it is. So we were talking about this. It's an effort that I've been making personally because it has been something in the news, something that I cover. Just the plastic that's in our oceans. We've got these whales turning up with plastic in their stomachs. How has your personal life and Everlane influenced how you live your life? And then, as you were just saying, translated to the office?
Right. I mean, it's definitely, this stuff can't not affect you. So, even in the early days, I hadn't really thought about, markups in that way, or I hadn't really examined quality around clothing in that same way. And now I'm just personally like way, way more diligent about it. I think in general I buy less. Obviously I buy a lot of stuff from Everlane, but I buy less, and I try to think about when I'm buying something like, okay, is this really something I'm gonna like keep and want for a long time? Because when you just start thinking about how wasteful the industry is, it's so devastating and overwhelming. And then again, like the plastic, that like I completely transformed my behavior around that. I used to use plastic all the time, and now like when I go to the grocery store, I'm like my mom from like in the 70s with my like containers and filling up the bulk section, and like I go to the one store in my town now where I know I can do that, and you're like, oh, okay, it's not like once you get in the habit of doing these things, it's not that hard, but it always has to start as that like conscious effort and until it becomes the habit, right?
I know you were saying it's hard to make that transition in the office.
Yeah.
Is there anything that Everlane has figured out that's really worked?
I mean, we've been using, so we're not totally done. We're sort of midway, but we just do a lot of bulk stuff, and you can get those compostable bags. So we use compostable bags for like our lettuce and a bunch of our snacks now, and we fill up big jars and containers with snacks, and so it looks more like the bulk section at the health food store. And then like a few bags of chips will sneak in, and they'll be gone in 5 minutes. Someone on Slack probably tells everyone.
Well, and one of the things that I was really excited to learn about Alex is that she does have a background in journalism, and she told me that she takes a journalistic rigor to her work, which I thought was really interesting. You worked at American Apparel. We know that you're one of the leaders of Everlane, but you've also written a book.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So right between American Apparel and Everlane, I wrote a book with a very close friend of mine. Actually, she's the reason I'm here, I think, because and And so the book was about the chemicals in personal care products and how they're unregulated. And so, yeah, it's just funny if I look back, there's been this sort of through line of transparency in everything I've done, but you can, again, it really kind of can go back to the journalism, because in journalism, great journalism, what it does is it like seeks out the truth and then hopefully distills it in a way that makes complex issues like more understandable to readers. And in our case, it's customers, but I think of copy in the same way. Like, and especially when you're talking about sustainability, like this stuff gets so complicated. And bless him, there's a kid on my team who's like this super sustainability nerd guy, and he'll go deep into all of these documents and really make sure that he's understood it thoroughly, and then he'll like help distill it, and then hopefully we turn it into copy and storytelling that is understandable to people, but without greenwashing and without dumbing it down. It's very challenging, and it's definitely like that's what I meant by the sort of journalistic rigor,
Well, sure, I'll do
Yeah.
hour and a half of interviews and tape, and I get to boil it down to a minute 20 seconds, which is the hardest part of my night every night, and you guys do that on the Everlane website. Alex actually started as a reporter for one of your local papers in Montreal, which is very cool. Do you find that works? Are people connecting on your website when you have bullet points about pricing and where the material came from, the sustainability? Are customers connecting?
So this is not data or anything, but I operate from what I call like online the scan test. So my goal for what we put out and what I've sort of instilled in the team is like, look at this email or look at this web page, and if someone was gonna, just sort of like scan it really quickly, could they get like the key points, So that's a copy thing. It's a hierarchy of graphic design thing. Like, are they going to get what we're trying to communicate to them? So that's sort of the first step. And then I believe and I hope that there's a group of customers, and I know there are. I don't know how big it is. I think it's probably like maybe it's between 10 and 20% of people who are really going to like read the whole thing and read the smaller copy. So you still have to really write for those people, because those are the people who will be your evangelists, and those are the people who will like talk to their friends about the brand, is the people who like actually care to read the smaller stuff. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Well, and Everlane started, of course, 8 years ago as a company founded with these responsible values. But what about companies and organizations who maybe didn't start that way but really want to put in the effort to pivot in that direction? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, I think. We're lucky. It's so much easier. So if anyone's early on or starting a company or still in the beginning, it's like, just do it now. Because especially with sustainability stuff, it's really hard to go back. And we've been on the sustainability front. There's a lot of things we just don't talk about because we're too far from perfect, but we're taking steps in the background. But even at our size, and we've been doing it for years, like it's hard. What I think I would say as far as advice goes is like, a couple of things. One, if you're a founder or you're part of the leadership team, just like make sure that the thing you're choosing to espouse is like actually like very meaningful to you. Like make sure that you and your leadership team like really genuinely care about it. I think a mistake that a lot of companies can make is that they're like, okay, we do this thing over here, and now we're gonna like support or get behind this other thing that feels like completely disconnected from our brand. And I know it might not always make sense for it to be like totally integrated in what the brand does, like for us with like ethical manufacturing. Just to give you guys an example, like so every year we do something called the Black Friday Fund, which is on Black Friday, all of our profits go towards, this year it went towards plastic. It was the first year we pivoted because we told a big story about it. But previous to that, it always went to one of our factories, and we worked to improve something in the factory for the workers. So I'm just giving that as an example of like, kind of make sure that it like ties through with what you do. Like if you make soda, you probably shouldn't be doing something around like health, but maybe you know that, you know, like underprivileged kids in cities are drinking your soda, like maybe there's something you can do with those kids. Like figure out how it connects from a storytelling perspective, because you're gonna have to tell that story to your employees, and if it's something that you're gonna talk about in the world, you're gonna have to tell it to the world. So make sure it connects. And then I think, you know, sort of building on that, like figure out ways to bring it into your own culture within the company. So again, like we're transparent. That doesn't just mean that we're transparent about our factories, but then inside Everlane, everyone's calendars are private and we don't talk about anything. You know, it's like, no, we present all of our board decks to the whole company and let everyone ask questions, because we have to be transparent, because this is what we talk about. So it's like, what are those touch points within the company too, where you're really bringing it into the culture and making it sort of like integral?
Well, thank you so much, Alex. This was really fun to me, and it was really fun getting to know you and going shopping at the Everlane.
Yeah.
So it was good assignment.
You still have to tell me what you got. Yeah.
I think we're out of time. Am I getting the signal?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for being here, and Alex, thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the conference, you guys.